The journey. He was busy with the other job. He was busy with the other job. He has one job. He was busy with the other one, though.
He has two jobs then.
Well, welcome back to the study. We are in the Old Testament. We've been studying the book of Nehemiah. We are entering into chapter 3, and my
That sigh is both of joy and
yes.
understanding.
When in doubt, shut it down and restart it, right? There we go.
Is it plugged in? Is it turned on?
So tonight we're going to be diving into chapter 3 and we will find ourselves standing at the gates and walls of once a great city of Jerusalem.
Many gates, many walls,
Yes.
and a whole bunch of cool landmarks.
Yep. So the narrative, it's going to paint a vivid picture of collective effort as families, priests, and community leaders come together to in unity to rebuild a city and the city's defenses, right? So the biggest thing here, what we see as we break it down, is each section of the wall, each gate, tells a story of dedication and hope, right? And the detailed account underscores the significance of every individual's contribution to a larger mission, right?
Yeah, this one was particularly hard for us because it was how hard do we nerd out, and then how much would it like completely lose most people, because you could really go deep into the weeds on a lot of this stuff because there's so much.
That's why I prefaced it earlier with welcome to a history class.
We're going to try not to bombard you with a lot of things that we thought were cool.
But that being said, chapter 3 is it really is it's really a historical account, basically. So that's why there is a lot. So there's a lot we can pull from it, a lot that you can learn from it and see. And this chapter, if you do like history, or if you start to see, it can show you and start to show you where connections happen throughout the Bible sometimes, right? And then you can visualize, and we'll help you visualize because we even went far as got you some maps.
We got pictures.
So
we got pictures for our visual learners because we are visual learners as well.
Right. But it's really interesting. What you see at the end of chapter 2, and I'm just going to mention this, and then we'll do a recap. We'll do our other stuff. But what you see at the end of chapter 2 is you see where the first-person narrative stops. And then chapter 3, it goes into a third-person narrative. So remember, the first-person narrative, this is Nehemiah talking. So many Bible scholars believe that chapter 3 was actually written later. It's more of a historical account and then was added into the canon kind of deal to the book itself later on, which is not uncommon.
Yeah, so with Near Eastern writing, none of these books were ever written by one person. That singular writer concept is a very Western idea. It comes from Rome, comes from the Roman idea, but Middle Eastern writers, especially during biblical times, they were commissioned by individuals, right? Samuel, the book of Samuel. Notice, book of Samuel, Samuel's dead through most of Samuel because he dies like chapter 6 of 1 Samuel, but it still has his name on it. That's because he had commissioned the book, and the priests and the writers that had learned under Samuel were still adding Samuel's notes, and they were writing, redacting, editing, moving things, and continuing to write the book out in its totality, in its entirety. The same thing happened with Nehemiah and Ezra. They never had single writers, and that's how you knew that the information was valid, because you're right, you have multiple writers. If somebody wrote some nonsense, there's about 70 people that is involved in most of these writing things that would call out nonsense. And it's like, no. You're not putting that in here. This is what really happened. And it will go through a whole bunch of other people before it ever got put in there. It's like the editor and the producer are all in the writing aspect, and the community writing aspect.
Right. So, which again brings back to the community part. That's what's so big about the Old Testament. It drives more community home into its lessons, because that's what they were. That's how they lived. That's how they breathed. That's how they act, right? So This chapter is not just about stones and timbers, though. Nope, 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 nope. But it's about community rebuilding and its identity and securing its future. So that was the huge thing. That's what drove Nehemiah at the very beginning, is like, hey, I got to do something to protect the future of my people, right? Because remember, they're coming out of exile, right? So let's walk through the gates. You like that? Let's walk through the gates.
You stayed up till 2 for that one, didn't you?
Section of the wall, right? We're just trying to make it.
I get to bed around 1:30.
Let's take a witness of the labor of love from the people that determined to restore their home after these announcements.
Announcements, all right. So I guess first on the list is obviously pumpkin patches going on. There's a sign up online. They need help during the weekdays. I believe it's from 9 to 2:30. They're needing help, those time frames. So if anybody can sign up, that'd be great. Also, the market, Calvary Market, is this weekend at 9 o'clock, and it'll be here. Another thing is we're prepping for Heart to Table. They're doing another cooking event on the 14th. It's going to be at Kristen Skinner's house at 10. We still need items for that. We're doing soup this weekend, or that weekend. And we're also helping a ministry, a PIN ministry. It's a homeless ministry, and they have requested goodies, like desserts. So we're prepping for that. So if you want to join with that, or if you can donate, we would love to have that, have items. Also, keep your eye out for Trunk or Treat. We know it's coming. It has not been advertised. It's usually the Saturday before the 31st that we do the Trunk or Treat, but just keep your eyes out open for that. What we do know is that the chili cook-off is coming, and that's on the 27th of Friday.
So
That's
don't turn in a soup.
That's right.
Put an actual chili in.
So obviously the BS starts.
So if you want the best chili, obviously you're going to have my chili. And if you want a mediocre soup, then you go to his table and enjoy whatever salmon bisque or whatever he's going to try to throw in there.
There's a lot of hot air blowing around in here.
But you know, I will say, whether you bring a soup or a chili, nothing gets left behind. So
Zero. So make one, bring one, or just come and enjoy some.
Yeah, and it's fun. A lot of people you vote using your dollar, and you pay for you get your samplings, right? Obviously, then you pay for your bowl, and the one that leaves with the most money is the one that wins, and all those dollars get put into the ministry that is currently being supported with the pumpkin patch.
And the only reason why Damon wins that is because he has more money than me. I'm a poor person.
Don't. I have many.
Look at my face.
I have many.
That money?
I have many kids, and this one has an Amazon account. Come on.
Have you seen? I got a Jeffrey.
Yeah, you right.
So there you go.
There's a Jeffrey right there. Never mind.
So, the couples ministry, they have a date night at Why Not on the 13th of October at 6:30. So if you're a couple and you want to just go out and hang out with other couples, join them.
Reach
If you
out
have any questions, reach out to Sherry or Lenny.
Yeah, reach out to the Pastritos. They know exactly which Why Not it is at.
It's the one here at Haygood, right? Oh, no. So 527 Providence Road.
527 Providence Road. 5257. See, now you're all
Just
confused.
look for
You're gonna get
Providence
lost.
Just call the Pastritos. They love
Message
getting
them,
phone calls
Sherry.
at 3 a.m.
Right. And their number's not 867-309 either.
No, that's Jesse's girl, right?
Right, or something like that. But
That is not Lenny's girl.
that's not Lenny's girl. No. All right.
We just really mixed two
let's-
songs.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and open in prayer and get back to some seriousness.
After all that chicanery, here we
Yes.
go. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this time and this opportunity, Lord. I pray that we're able to go into this topic and we're able to flesh out what needs to be fleshed out, Lord. May it sink into our minds. May we see the joy and the true lessons in the building and the reconstruction of this wall, Lord. I pray that every ear and every heart, they pick something out of this that they're able to attribute to their lives that will help them grow stronger in their understanding of you, Lord. I pray that we're able to deliver your message and we're able to to discuss this topic the best we can. I ask this all in your sweet precious name I pray. Amen.
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 So let's do a quick recap of chapters 1 and 2. So Nehemiah chapters 1 and 2, we saw the introduction and the beginning of Nehemiah's mission to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, right? And in chapter 1, we saw Nehemiah's prayer. We broke that out a little bit, right? The initial news was brought by his brother, so that it begins with Nehemiah the cupbearer to King Xerxes of Persia, and he receives this news from his brother
Hanani.
Hanani about the deployable conditions of Jerusalem, mainly the walls. He said the walls are broken down and its gates are burned. And this news that brought, and if you read the first chapter, you see how distressed Nehemiah became, right? Very distressed.
And this is after a lot of the events in Ezra, because these are the people that went in chapter 1, it says the people that escaped. It's talking about the refugees that had returned. Remember, whenever we were doing our Ezra study, a lot of the focus was rebuilding the temple. They really didn't rebuild any of the walls.
Right. So Nehemiah's grief was a major point that we brought out, or that is brought out, and he was moved by the devastation of his homeland, and Nehemiah mourns, fasts, and prays for several days, many days, actually, before he receives an answer.
Possibly
Was
months.
it like 4 months before he received his
Yeah,
answer?
no, actually 6.
Yeah.
It was 6 from what is shown in Scripture, but we don't know if there was any time but even before that. But he was locked in prayer, fasting, supplication, just like he was really focused on this.
That's definitely pray, don't get in front of God. All right. So, and then Nehemiah's prayer reveals his deep love for his people and his trust in God. He confesses the sins of Israel, right? Then he remembers God's promises made by Moses about gathering his people if they repent, right? And asks for success in the task he's about to undertake.
The other thing to really point out is while he was praying for Israel and the sins and repentance, remember, he's all the way in Babylon, many months' journey away, and he hasn't even been to Israel as of yet, but he owns he owns the sins of the people, even though he was never there. He takes responsibility, even though he had no part of it.
Right. It's a very heartfelt prayer. And then you move into chapter 2, where Nehemiah gives a request to the king. So he has the royal encounter where some months later, and we said it's probably about 6 months, while he was serving wine to the king, King Xerxes, the king notices Nehemiah's sadness. He noticed how he looked, right? And this was risky because showing sadness in the king's presence could have severe consequences, like off with his head or many other things, right? However, Xerxes kindly asked Nehemiah, "Why so sad, bro?" Right? He just goes, "Why so
Why
sad?"
so glum, chum?
Right? But which is very unusual. And the revealing reason was Nehemiah explains the plight of Jerusalem, which makes him desolate. And the king, understanding Nehemiah's deep connection to his homeland, asks him, and he wants what he wants, right? So many say that that if you look at the prayer and the time between when Nehemiah received the message and his prayer and fasting and he received the answer, shows you God's always working behind the scene, because not only was he working and comforting Nehemiah in this prayer and fasting, right? He was working on preparing the heart of the king, preparing the situation, preparing what needs to happen. So when Nehemiah was in presence of the king, what happens? The king, who is a Gentile, right, answers the call, right? And God's guidance, before answering the king, Nehemiah sends the silent prayer to God. We talked about those being those emergency prayers, or those quick prayers that we say many times. And when you're in a situation that you can't pray and fast on something, it's one of those things like, "Lord, be with me. Lord, give me the right words," whatever it may be, before you go into a meeting, or whatever it goes to. Those are called emergency prayers, right? What some people call. And then Nehemiah's request With God's guidance, Nehemiah boldly requests leave to go to Jerusalem and rebuild the walls, which is a huge request, right? And he also asked for letters from the king to ensure safe passage to obtain timber for the forest. So it shows that Nehemiah did a lot of his homework. He knew what was going on. So when you're praying and fasting, you don't just sit and wait for God to wave his magic wand and make it happen. There's things you should be doing in the process. Prayer, fasting, study, things like that.
And that's the example that we see with Nehemiah, is that it wasn't just a prayer, God fix the problem, God, you intervene. But it was, God, how can you use me to answer that call?
How are you going to get the
Right.
glory, God? How
Right.
can you use me so you
Right.
get the glory, what needs to happen, right? And that's the big thing. That's what Nehemiah really focused on. So then you see the king grant the favor. Then you see Jerusalem, Nehemiah. There's a J, there's Ne, there's a. So Nehemiah travels to Jerusalem. There you go. That's the one, right? So
That's the guy, and that's the place.
right? After 3 days of rest, he inspects the walls at night without telling anyone about his mission. So many times we have to learn that self-control, right? That self-control where sometimes we have to keep things to ourselves and God so we can truly hear him. And then he provides certain things in our lives or certain people in our lives to answer those questions as well. So if you're fasting, praying, and seeking his face, he'll reveal the answers to you. But many times, don't play your cards.
Yeah, and I think whenever we went over that was last week, right? We
Yes.
did hit on Proverbs and how Proverbs talks about seeking wise counsel, not advertising everything to everyone, because this is the age that nobody knows how to keep journals. They just throw everything on Facebook. But instead, he went to a small group of people and he had an entourage because he's in hostile areas. And he goes about these things without telling everybody that didn't really need to know at the time.
Right? And then you see he faces some opposition. Nehemiah's intent becomes known. Local rulers, including Sanballat and Tobiah, become anti-Gnostic.
Antagonistic.
Antagonist. That's what it is.
That one.
Yeah. Well, agnostic.
Agnostic?
That's
Yeah,
what I
why
was
not?
thinking.
Yeah,
I was
why
thinking
not?
Gnostic.
Become one of those Gnostic
I see
thingies.
Gnostic. Tells you what I've been studying.
Antagonistic.
Yeah, tells you what I've been studying a lot lately, right? Setting the stage for the challenges Nehemiah will face, right? So basically, chapters 1 and 2 have set the stage for Nehemiah's total mission, right? And his mission is building the wall, rebuilding the wall, building and rebuilding. Let's say it this way, because we just say building the wall, because actually we find out as we go through it, it's building and rebuilding the wall. And
Yeah,
there's a huge difference, and there's a huge difference when you're studying the actual Hebrew.
Two different words. So whenever we read through here, as we read through there, take a mental note on what's being built and what's being repaired. And some of them are being built and repaired.
Nice. So, all right, so we're going to read chapter 3, and then we're going to bring out some historical content, and then we're going to start showing some maps and some stuff and going through
Maps and
all these
visuals and such.
walls
Cool
and
stuff.
All the cool
it's
stuff.
And it's actually really cool, because like, think about this. How many people actually, show of hands, really have a desire to go to Jerusalem? Right?
How many people have been?
So, but this
Me
is one of
neither.
those things where you kind of walk through it, and then you see some old and new, and then you're like, oh man, that would be so great to stand there and be there and see that and be part of that, or things like that. So, especially when you start to see the pool Shalom.
Oh yeah,
and
the pool.
where it's at, and
Where is the pool of Siloam that's mentioned in the New Testament?
you start seeing the connections. Let's read Nehemiah chapter 3.
All right. The high priest Eliashib and his fellow priests began rebuilding the sheep gate. They dedicated it and installed its doors. After building the wall, the tower of the 100 and the tower of Hananel, they dedicated it. The men of Jericho built next to Eliashib, and next to them Zakur, son of Imri, built. The sons of Hassanah built the fish gate. They built it with beams and installed its doors, bolts, and bars. Next to them, Meremoth, son of Uriah, son of Haghaz, made repairs. Beside them, Meshullam, son of Berekah, son of Meshezabel, made repairs. Next to them, Zadok, son of Bana, made repairs. Beside them, the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not lift a finger to help their supervisors.
Órale.
Old Gate, Joiada, son of Paseah, and Meshullam, son of Besadiah, repaired the Old Gate. They built it with beams and installed its doors, bolts, and bars. Next to them, the repairs were done by Melatiah, the Gibeonite, Jedon, the Meronothite, and the men of Gibeon and Mitzvah, who were under the authority of the governor of the region west of the Euphrates River. After him, Uziel, son of Hariah, the goldsmith, made repairs, and next to him, Hananiah, son of the perfumer, made repairs. They restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Next to them, Rephaiah, son of Hur, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, made repairs. After them, Jedidiah, son of Haramoth, made repairs across from his house. Next to him, Hutush, the son of Hashabneh, made repairs. Malchijah, son of Harim, and Hashub, son of Pathamoab, made repairs to another section, as well as the tower of the ovens. Beside him, Shallum, son of Halahish, ruler of half the district of Jerusalem, made repairs, he and his daughters. Hanan and the inhabitants of Zenoah repaired the valley gate. They rebuilt it and installed its doors, bolts, and bars, and repaired 500 yards of the wall to the dung gate. Malchijah, son of Rechab, ruler of the district of Beth Sherem, repaired the dung gate. He rebuilt it and installed its doors, bolts, and bars. Shallun, son of Kolhezeth, ruler of the district of Mitzvah, repaired the fountain gate. He rebuilt it and roofed it. Then he installed its doors, bolts, and bars. He also made repairs to the wall of the pool of Shelah, near the king's garden, as far as the stairs that descend from the city of David. After him, Nehemiah, son of Azbuk, ruler of half the district of Bethzur, made repairs up to a point opposite the tombs of David, as far as the artificial pool and the house of the warriors. Next to him, the Levites made repairs under Rehum, son of Bani. Beside him, Hashbai, ruler of half the district of Keilah, made repairs for his district. After him, their fellow Levites made repairs under Binu, son of Henadad, ruler of half the district of Keilah. Next to him, Azer, son of Jeshua, ruler of Mitzvah, made repairs to another section opposite the ascent to the armory at the angle. After him, Baruch, son of Zabbai, diligently repaired another section from the angle to the door of the house of the high priest Eliashib. Beside him, Meremoth, son of Uriah, son of Hakoz, made repairs to another section from the door of Eliashib's house to the end of his house. And next to him, the priests from the surrounding area made repairs. After them, Benjamin and Hashub made repairs opposite their house. Beside them, Azariah, son of Mahazziah, son of Ananiah, made repairs beside his house. After him, Binui, son of Henadad, made repairs to another section from the house of Azariah to the angle and the corner. Palal, son of Uzai, made repairs opposite the angle and tower that juts out from the king's upper palace by the country yard of the guard. Beside him, Pedadiah, son of Parosh, and the temple servants living on Ophel made repairs opposite the water gate toward the east and the tower that juts out. Next to him, the Tekoites made repairs to another section from a point opposite the great tower that juts out as far as the wall of Ophel. Each of the priests made repairs above the horse gate, each opposite his own house. After them, Zedek, son of Emer, made repairs opposite his house, and beside him, Shemaiah, son of Shechaniah, guard of the east gate, made repairs. Next to him, Hananiah, son of Shelemiah, and Hanun, the sixth son of Zalaph, made repairs to another section. After them, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, made repairs opposite his room. Next to him, Malachiah, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs to the house of the temple servants and the merchants opposite the inspection gate, and as far as the upstairs room on the corner. The goldsmiths and merchants made repairs between the upstairs room on the corner and the sheep gate.
Man, that was a lot of crazy names, and you did great.
Yes.
Yeah, no, you did great. Hats off. Well, she's a smart one.
No.
So, real fast, let's do a historical content, and it's understand. And the reason why we're doing the historical content, and we've repeated it, because to truly understand Ezra and Nehemiah, you have to understand the geopolitical environment of what was going on. To understand the exile, you got to understand what was happening. So, to start it off, it's Babylonians and the exile, right? So the Babylonian Empire, right? They came in. This was in the modern day Iraq, right?
Yeah.
So they came in and they dominated the Mesopotamian empires, right? So under the leadership of King Nebuchadnezzar II, they reached the height of their power about the 6th century BC. So a long, long time ago.
Yeah, they were like the big empire at the time.
Right. And he came in and destroyed Jerusalem around 586 BC.
Yeah. If you ever have any questions about that, read 2 Kings or 2 Chronicles.
Or
Jeremiah.
Yes. And I just read an archaeological article about how they just unearthed in a spot that they found, the first time they ever found, evidence of the Babylonian siege destruction and the Roman destruction.
Yeah, this place got sacked a few times.
Yeah, remember, the second temple got destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. The first temple got destroyed by the Babylonians. The second temple got destroyed by the Romans. That's the history for you, right? I told you there's going to be a lot of history in here. So that devastating event resulted in Judah's repeated rebellions against the Babylonian vassalage. And then what the Babylonians were known for, if you read the history, is when they destroyed something and they overtook a country or overtook an area, a territory, they would send all the people into exile.
Well,
so their elite skilled workers, politician officials, and others in that nature, they would deport them. And they would leave us poor people.
Yeah. The poor people that didn't have any skills, they were just happy to not be killed. They just wanted to work and pay bills and feed kids.
So many of those people would just work and pay bills and feed kids, and they wouldn't buck the system, and they would also import their rulers, who they wanted to run that area. And they wouldn't really, most of the times the Babylonians really didn't put money or stock into rebuilding things. They just destroyed it and whatever, and they took the spoils and they did what they want, right? So that's why many things were just left in ruin. So then you have the return of the exiles. So the Persian Empire came in and destroyed the Babylonian Empire, right? And under the Persian Empire, Cyrus the Great, who God touched his heart, and he was actually a very anointed king.
Yeah.
The first anointed Gentile.
First anointed Gentile.
Right?
So that's very important to keep in mind. Whenever the Bible talks about people that are anointed, they're always set apart and special.
Right. So he conquered the Babylonians, and then Cyrus decreed and gave Ezra basically permission to return, or the people of Israel to return back to Jerusalem, right? He wrote them a decree to return. And then, so they had that first wave we talked about. It was Zerubbabel, his team, his group came in, and then remember when Ezra, we talked, they had the list of people, and that was the account of the people that returned the first wave, and then they had the second wave, and the wave with Ezra, and then they
Yeah, and
rebuilt the temple.
all of these waves, I mean, there was like a decade or more in between them too. So those first group of people came, and then they really started establishing their own life for good, bad, and indifferent.
Right.
And then the next group with Ezra came, and they saw what it became of the first group for good, bad, and indifferent.
Right. And then they, through all the challenges we saw in Ezra, they rebuilt the temple, right? So they reestablished the altar, they reestablished the temple, which reestablished the relationship with God, or to be able to atone for the sins of the people, right? Which is what they needed to do, right? And then you come to Nehemiah, where we see the need for the city walls and the gates to be rebuilt. And so the temple is built. It's built to a point, because remember, the temple is built, but it's not completely built, because it doesn't get completely built until later on.
Till a little later, yeah.
King Herod.
Well, no, King Herod,
Not
you
Herod,
remember there's a
backup one.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that happens with the Maccabees and things like that.
Yeah.
Herod extends the
Extends the
temple
temple.
and rebuild and finishes
the
building
great.
it. Yeah, to the great thing.
It's huge.
But
really.
yeah, Ezra's temple is finished enough.
Yes, enough to restore the relationship with God. So history continues to happen, basically. So while the temple was reconstructed, the city walls and gates remain in ruins. Without them, Jerusalem was vulnerable to attacks and raids, right? Middle Ages, if anybody studied or watches any old Middle Age movies, what's the one thing that they do? They have the walls, they pull the people into the castle, they bring up the drawbridge to protect the town, right? They sound the alarm, and that's basically the same concept, right? Walls were symbolic of the city's strength, sovereignty, and pride. A city without walls was considered defenseless and dishonored. So the significance to Nehemiah's mission is Nehemiah comes into the picture several decades after the temple's completion. Nehemiah hears about the city's terrible state. The city walls are not just physical barriers. They are crucial for protection, governance, trade, and a sense of communal identity.
And I think it is important to note, remember all of these people that were named and listed here, these were parts of the peoples that had came back with Zerubbabel and Ezra, and they really started reestablishing Jewish-specific authority in Jerusalem. They didn't have that at some point. For 70 years, it was Babylonian authority and a whole bunch of, people that were just not, at the lowest rung, kind of there, and they built a culture and a society in that 70 years. Now you have new management coming in saying, you guys aren't legitimate to this land, y'all need to go. We're the legitimate actual owners of this land, and we don't care what you built up. We're coming in and we're going to reestablish what had been here before y'all. So the tensions are already there.
Right.
Prior to Nehemiah, and we saw the tensions whenever we were learning about Ezra.
Right. So, and the biggest thing you have to understand is Nehemiah wasn't just this foreman of a construction site. He wasn't just there rebuilding walls and towers. He was rebuilding the people, right? He was bringing them together, unifying them, restoring dignity, security, and that communal integrity that the Jewish people needed in their homeland. And that's the huge, and that's why Nehemiah is very important to today, is because it has the very big lessons of leadership, right? And many aspects in that leadership: humility, unity, all of them, right? So let's jump into some geographical layout.
Let's talk
With
about
pictures.
gates.
With some pictures.
With some pictures. Let's talk about gates.
All right, Lenny, the first one's the sheep gate.
Oh, yeah. So the sheep gate
Lenny
is...
back here, he left.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
there he
Oh,
is.
there he is. Hi. Look for
Should
the
be-
hat.
Should be the first picture, Lenny.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. So, all right, this is actually I lied. It wasn't a sheet gate. The first picture.
That's not a
So
sheep
the first
gate.
picture, this is just, I grabbed this one, I threw up here just to show you. So this one is, so after the Babylonian exile, right? But this is actually a pre-Babylonian attack. And what I want to point out is everything to the left is all the houses, the town. That was all the people. What you see in the middle, at the top there, you see kind of like the temple, and that's Jerusalem, the walls. See the walls around it? So that's the walls around the township. That all, with the west of the city, was all destroyed by the Babylonians. Just destroyed, right? Parts of the city of Jerusalem was still standing, but parts of the walls were torn down and destroyed. So we're going to systematically go around it to show you what the importance of each gate that's mentioned, because every one of these we go on through is actually written in the chapter. Remember, we've always said that if it's written in the Bible, there's significance to it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Sometimes we might not know the answer to it when you're in certain books, like Ezekiel, but but it's very important, so we should never negate it.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that Nehemiah, or the book of Nehemiah, it's going from the very northern gate and it's going counterclockwise. So it's circling the entire city and it comes right back up. So notice whenever we started getting close to the end, Ishalab, the high priest that was the beginning guy, he's starting to get mentioned because his group is now in that northern part, because he literally has taken us all the way up and around, and we're already getting back into this northern part of the area.
So now we'll walk through it, and this next one, Lenny, should be the sheep. There you go.
There we go. Oh, that's from I know where you got that picture
told you.
from. That's a good picture.
Yeah. I went and took it myself.
Yeah, obviously.
Photographer.
The Wayback
Practicing.
Machine.
The Wayback Machine. So you see the sheep gate. It starts with the sheep gate mentioned here, right? So the chapter starts with the rebuilding of the sheep gate, which was likely located in the north central part of the city.
Oh, no, definitely in the north central part. And notice that big block in the middle, that's the temple.
Right, that's the temple. And the priests were responsible for its construction and sanctification. So I'm not even going to begin to pronounce the Hebrew word.
The
for it.
Shahar
Hatason.
Hatason.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't hurt yourself.
Right, which translated as sheep gate. It's named for its proximity to the sheep market or sheep pool. The purpose was likely used to bring the sheep into the city for sacrifices.
Yeah,
Thus the reason why it's located right behind the temple.
Yeah. So one of the things when I was reading about the northern gate, one, they always say that Jesus came in through the sheep gate, but that's not necessarily true. Whenever Herod did his expansion, he actually built over and buried the original sheep gate. He came in through the Golden Gate, or the Great Gate, which is actually located on the east side, which is actually a little bit more involved in messianic prophecy than the sheep gate. But the sheep gate sounds nice whenever you're trying to, explain that he was the Passover lamb and whatnot. But at the time of Jesus' life, sheep gate was buried and was completely covered by Herod's construction. Right. When people really started picking apart this Nehemiah chapter 3, and they put the priests to build these walls, the assumption was these walls weren't that damaged, and they gave an easy job to the priests guys while everybody else did the hard work. In all actuality, whenever Babylon invaded, they invaded from the north, because that valley is prime spot. All the other walls, notice how they're kind of on this incline, but that valley right there was the easiest point of attack on Jerusalem. So when they sacked it, almost all of that was destroyed. So the priest guys that were rebuilding the north, they actually had the heavier burden.
That's it. So the current existence, the gate is believed to be partially preserved in modern Jerusalem. So if we go there, you might see part of it. And It's associated with the sheep pool, which may have been used in the ritual purification and is significant for Passover sacrifices because the lamb had to be pure, right? And in the New Testament references, we can see it mentioned in John chapter 5, verse 2, in the context of the pool of Bethsaida.
Bethsaida.
Right.
That's where the blind man washed his eyes and got new eyes.
Right. So then you have the Tower of Meh and the Tower of Hanel, and we'll go over those later. Those are landmarks, but we're going through the gates.
Yeah, we're
right
hitting
now.
the gates first. We'll come back. We'll come back for those towers.
And then I think Lenny is going to be probably 2 pictures down. It'll be the fish gate is the next gate.
There we go.
So this is the fish gate. So we're moving counterclockwise. We come to the fish gate, which was probably situated to the northwest, as you see. This gate might have been used primarily by fishermen coming from the Mediterranean Sea and Sea of Galilee. So you can imagine it probably faced the sea.
Yeah. It's definitely like this avenue for commerce. A lot of goods came through there. Mainly, like the reason why Babylon came through there and wrecked the north was because traveling up there was easier. It was the easiest path for merchants to bring stuff to the city.
Okay. So it was likely named for the fish market or the fisherman's activity, possibly used for transportation of sale of fish. Current existence, the gate's exact location in modern Jerusalem is uncertain.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things buried in time.
Oh, we will hear about the fish gate later.
Yes. And so use in Judaism, no specific religious significance mentioned in the Bible. It was just one of those points.
Yeah,
that they used.
basically just the serving of commerce, really. And again, we will talk about it later.
Comes up again.
Yeah, it comes up again.
We go to the old gate. And the next, yeah, there you go. So you can see the old gate. And you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's the walls in between. So we'll mention those a little bit later. But the old gate, or the Jeshana gate, and that gate was further to the west or southwest. The exact purpose or significance of the gate isn't clear from historical records. As you can see, there's not a lot of, in some areas it's not clear what the purposes were for, but they were very significant in rebuilding.
Yeah,
So,
needless to say, Rome made sure that we couldn't find them.
yes. So likely named for its age or historical significance, thus the old, right? The current existence is uncertain right now, so it was not be able to find, and they don't know the use of it in Judaism.
They don't know. It's just, it was a gate that was there. They just don't know what, it's been lost.
And this is a point. So these are all very important points that were brought into Nehemiah 3 for building and rebuilding. So the next one is the Valley Gate. There we go. I think that's it. Let me see. I think that's just the model of Nehemiah's Jerusalem.
There you go. Yeah, there we go. And there's the Pool of Siloam.
Yep, that's the one. So it's situated to the southwest and leading to the Valley of Hinnom. It's named for its proximity to the Valley Gate. They put a lot of thought into naming some of these, right?
You know, sometimes you don't need,
Simplicity,
it doesn't need.
right? Exactly. Doesn't need to be Timbuktu.
Sometimes-
Likely served as an entrance to the city from the west. So it was a main entrance from the west side. So,
That's the best side.
all right. The gate's location in modern Jerusalem is uncertain and no specific religious significance, except for maybe a defense point. Then we come to the Dung Gate, as you see at the very end there.
Yeah.
This gate was the furthest south, near the southernmost tip of the city. It likely led to where waste was discarded, hence the name dung, right?
Yeah, it's where the garbage went and
Right.
everything else associated. So the funny thing is, though, further out is a burn pit, right? And the first concepts or imageries of hell were associated with these
Yes.
burn pits. So, the idea of this dung gate leading to this area of filth and disgust and burning and nastiness was used as imagery to depict hell.
Right. It shows you also the advances of the people of Israel and how important sanitation was for them.
Well, yeah, look at a lot of in Torah about cleanliness and sanitation.
Goes into the living water, which is huge in the Bible. Huge reference in Old and New. Then you go to you come around and you go the dung gate and you go to the fountain gate. Let's see what's the next one.
Booyah, there it is.
And so it's moving eastwards near the pool of Siloam, a vital water source for the city. Huge water source for the city. So it's named in the proximity of the water source and used to access water supply. The gate's still uncertain.
Yeah,
for
they
today,
don't know where this gate is,
They
and
don't know.
there's no like ceremonies to this particular gate. Some of these gates have ceremonious purposes, and a lot of them don't. The next one does.
The next one does. This next one's pretty cool. The next one's the water gate.
So which is crazy because there's
not Nixon era water.
yeah, there's a
This is different water.
fountain gate and then a water gate, but it's two different concepts. One was specific for just getting water into the city and things like that. This gate actually was more towards the wow, I went blank.
The essential.
What? Yeah. No, the ceremonies with Passover and things like
Yes.
that, where they would do the water sacrifices and things like that. That's the gate that they would use for these particular.
Yes. So this was actually used in associating with gathering the people during significant events such as reading of the law. Remember when Ezra gathered them together to read the law? This was the area where they gathered them. This would be an area they all gather together and review the law. So in New Testament references mentioned in Nehemiah 8:1, where Ezra reads the law to Moses, what we just said, Nehemiah 8:3, where it serves as the gathering people, gathering
That's
place.
typo. That's
Old Testament, excuse
Old
me.
Testament.
Not new. Then we have we'll roll through these. I don't think they might be, yeah, there they are. The horse gate. We don't have a lot on these because there really isn't a lot on them.
Yeah.
Located in the east and northeast, it's possible that these gate was near the places where horses were kept, perhaps near royal stables.
Yeah, and probably associated with the military because the military would be the ones using horses more so than mules or camels or other beasts of burden.
Mm-hmm. Then you had the east gate. Name implies the gate was on the eastern wall. And you have the muster gate or inspection gate. The exact location and purpose of this gate are not clearly known. And then you have the gate of Ephraim. And this gate, mentioned later in Nehemiah, was likely located in the northern wall and led towards the territory of the tribe of Ephraim. And then you have the Tower of Ovens, which is Damien's favorite part, or furnaces, which was also in the north. And the reason why it's your favorite, because
I like to bake. And so check it out. They didn't have industrial baking back then. They baked very in their kitchens in very small portions specifically for their families. But Israel had a lot of ceremonies and a lot of things that involved bread. So they had this tower that was specifically designed for baking large amounts, specifically for the temple. And they would bake high volumes of bread, like the show bread and various things for and unleavened bread and things like that, so that they could distribute it out for particular religious practices or things like that. Sometimes even just for helping people out that were in need. This was like a massive bakery. It's just, kind of interesting to see something that we have in our world being in that world whenever you really didn't even see that in the European antiquities. You didn't see that in a lot of places.
Right. You had bakers. So if you go back in time and you're looking for Damien, you know where he'll be.
Hey, and the street was the Baker's Street.
It was.
It was literally the
called Baker's
Baker's Street. And there's the Tower of Oven and Baker Street. So these are the things that I.
These are the things that Damien and I get all excited about. These little tiny things. So the significance of these gates, the gates of Jerusalem that we see here, were significant importance both in defense and facilitating the day-to-day functions, as we saw with the Tower of Furnaces, right? So the sheep gate defense, as a starting point for the description of the wall building process, the gate might have had particular ceremonial importance. We talked about that. The sacrificing. The fish gate, strategically located to protect one or the main entrances to the city. And then we talked about the suggestion of that being the fish trade and things like that. The old gate, it positioned to defend another section of the city's perimeter. The valley gate overlooked the valley, providing a vantage point for potential threats coming from that direction. The dung gate, located at the southern tip, offering protection from that angle. Fountain gate, positioned at Polis Salam, guarding the crucial water sources, right? Water is important.
Oh, yeah.
Especially clean water, right? Water gate's another critical point over the water. On the eastern side, you have the horse gate, obviously eastern gate, the muster gate. Its exact position is not certain, but it's played the role in the city's defense. And the name suggests that it might have been a place where the troops were respected or gathered together. Thus the muster, gathering, inspection, right? And the gate of Ephraim is likely a major gate on the northern side of the city, guarding against threats from that direction, and the functions provided access toward the territory of the tribe of Ephraim and the northern kingdom. This gate would have been essential for trade and travel to the north. And then, of course, the Tower Ovens, what we talked about. So, as you can see, the tower's inclusion and descriptions of the rebuilding effort underlines that comprehensive nature of Nehemiah's project. This was no simple rehab of your home here.
No, this is a massive
undertaking. And again, we mentioned it once. I think we'll mention it again, and we'll probably mention it 1,000 times. It is a record-breaking undertaking because they built it in 50-something days.
57 days, I believe. 57 days to complete.
Look at that.
And there's only like a handful of people that are mentioned and named, right, and various like
they said there's 48
groups.
names.
Yeah, like 48 different individuals, and quite a few that are like just groups, but you really don't have an idea of what kind of people, what kind of numbers they're doing this work.
So, and when we say Nehemiah built his wall, I mean he built walls, he built main gates, they rebuilt main gates and various towers and secondary structures, ensuring that the fortification of the entire city. I mean, when you look at that and you read that, and then you put in your mind that 50-something days they rebuilt this. That is amazing. I mean, it just blows your mind. It blows my mind because various parts of it were in just shambles, like not there at all, right? That's why when we talk about, we break down the wording, it's built and rebuilt.
Yeah, especially like that northern section was completely decimated.
Right. So you have some landmarks that we saw there, that the Tower of the 100, the border wall, the Tower of Hanel, the Tower of Ovens, the Dragon Spring, and the House of the Mighty Men.
Yeah, the Broad Wall is interesting because whenever Jerusalem was invaded by the Babylonians, that's where the princes sat upon the conquered city, was on that broad wall. They sat there and kind of like lorded over their conquest. That's in Jeremiah, I believe.
So now you come to the families that you see in 3. Now, we told you this is full of history and a lot of things, and it was like one of those things that like you really got to dive in. If you're studying, this is one that you have to take a moment and you have to give yourself ample time because it's not going to be all revealed in just reading the scripture. You have to pull it apart and see where it's all coming from, right? It's a lot of history. So Nehemiah 3 provides a detailed account of those involved in the reconstruction of the walls. And it's noteworthy to see the wide variety of individuals and families that came together for this common purpose. And that's huge. These were many types of people gathered in one with one mission to accomplish.
Yeah, and look at a lot of these individuals. Not a single one of them. I saw goldsmith, perfumers. You had priests. You had all these very
walks of
groups.
life.
None of them were masons. None of them were builders of any sort.
Right?
I think the one that really stood out to me that was the one group was Shalom and his daughters. So
have
in the
sons.
book that I was reading, they actually did the longest stretch of repair. It was 87 meters that this dad and his girls did the repairs on. 87 meters. That's him and his girls just out there rebuilding and repairing this wall. That's amazing. I want to know how many girls did he have?
Right.
Because it didn't say he had any sons. It was him and his
His
daughters
daughters.
out there mending this wall.
Right. So, and I told you, this is exciting stuff, and we're running out of time, right? So
We don't want to turn this into part 2.
but we are going to turn it in part 2 because we're not going to get through all of it.
But you know what? Since we're going to turn into part 2 anyways, I want to stop and talk about something that D.L. Moody had said regarding the church, because we're seeing people come together of all different backgrounds, right? And they're coming together and they're rebuilding these walls, right? All for the glory of God. So in our study, we read here, a great many people have got a false idea about the church, and said evangelist D.L. Moody. They have got an idea that the church is a place to rest in, to get into a nicely cushioned pew and contribute to the charities, listen to the minister, and do their share to keep the church out of bankruptcy is all they want. The idea of work for them, actual work in the church, never enters their minds. Then he goes to say in 1 Corinthians 12 and 14, Paul compared individual Christians to members of the human body. Each member is important, and each has a specific function to perform. I recall the relief that came to my own heart when I realized that God didn't expect me to do everything in the church, but rather to use my gifts he gave me in the tasks that he assigned. When I started doing that, I discovered I was helping others discover and develop their own gifts, and all of us accomplish more for the Lord. And that's something that we can anchor on today when we look at Nehemiah and how this rebuilding really glorified God.
Yeah, Nehemiah
with that
chapter 3
focus.
is the biggest lesson that you can see on unity.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, like going back to how all parts of the body. I know it kind of seemed like we were saying a lot of we don't know what these functions didn't really serve ceremonious things or whatnot. You see a mixture of gates that served very physical, very visceral needs: water, market, protection, things like that. But then you see these gates that were very spiritual, that they're part of a beautiful tapestry of their spiritual lives. But they all were built with the same zeal.
Right.
Nobody was focusing on only the spiritual gate or only the commerce gate. They attacked the job regardless of the function of the
Right.
gate, because the gate was needed.
They saw the purpose and the mission, and the purpose and mission was to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, to protect, to build their dignity back up. They unified for one. The church today needs to unify for one, and the mission is the kingdom of heaven, right? The kingdom of God. That's the mission. So we should unify. Paul talks in Corinthians that there are many people, right? There are many parts to the body, right? If each one of us are doing the right-hand job, who's doing the left-hand job?
Or the foot.
Or the foot, right? Meaning today, everybody has a swim lane. You get in your swim lane and you do what you have to do, and God will connect everything where it needs to connect for the community of the church. And we see that later on as we go into study, how these people, when they came together, they had their section, but look, it's a wall, so it all connects. There doesn't need to be a weak point. So at some point, they have to come together and work together. And it points out that they're seamless. There's nothing, you don't find a seam.
Right.
So they seamlessly put the wall together. The church today, the community today of Christ, if we come together and we do the purpose that God's got us to do, He will seamlessly put us together with the Holy Spirit so we can do the mission of the kingdom.
And keep in mind, that's both the physical work of the like selling pumpkins or cooking food or, you know, the physical aspects of the church, as well as the spiritual aspects of praying for each other and doing like baptisms and the Last Supper and the Lord's Supper. Those aspects, which are very spiritual in nature, they all go together and they all work together to make us a church. So you can't have one over the other.
Right. So we're going to close with the reading of the Shema and a prayer. Next Wednesday, we're going to dive into the individuals, and then we're going to show the spiritual application of it, and then break it out a little bit more on what it means today, you know, the lessons of it.
Probably more pictures, right? Or we're done with pictures.
We have some more pictures. We can probably do a couple more pictures.
I like
But,
pictures.
We'll throw in there the practical application, which is important, I think, the practical application, and then we'll do a little personal reflection. You like that one?
I like that.
All right, Deuteronomy 6:4. Listen, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These words that I'm giving you today are to be on your heart. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and let them be a symbol on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and your city gates.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this time and this opportunity to be together as a family and learn your word, Lord. I pray that we presented this in a manner that is fitting to you, Lord. I pray that everybody got something from this, Lord. I pray that they're inspired to build the walls and the gates in their lives that will serve both those physical functions and the spiritual functions, Lord. I pray that they're able to take those lessons and apply it to the church that they're in, Lord, and that we can all work together in that one unified body for your glory. I ask this all in your sweet, precious name I pray. Amen.
And one final note, next week, if you would like, I will make a copy of our notes so you could have the notes to kind of go over, because I know it's a lot of history. And we'll also put a little reference page of some of the books that we use to gather the information from, so if you wanted to go pull those up and whatnot.
Yeah, it was one of those whenever we started, it's like, where are we going to find the information? Then I started looking, it was like, what are we going to do with all this information?
So, all right. Well, we'll see y'all on the funny pages.